So when I started woodworking, I started off sharpening all my chisels and my plane irons with what's called the scary sharp method. And that's basically using a piece of wet, dry sandpaper on a flat reference surface. In my case, I used a piece of marble, but a lot of people use a piece of glass. And I like this method for a couple reasons. First of all, it's pretty cheap to get into. You just have to buy a couple of sheets of wet and dry sandpaper and find a good reference surface, and you can go to town sharpening. And the next stop in my sharpening journey was to one of these. And this is a set of water stones. What I like about water stones is they cut fast. It means that you're not spending a ton of time sharpening, and you can move through each individual stone's grit pretty quickly. Now, because they do cut fast, they're fairly soft and they can wear away. So that means there's a little bit of maintenance to them. You have to keep them flat, and every couple uses, you have to flatten them to make sure that you keep a true flat reference face. In addition, they do have to be soaked in water, which usually in our home shop isn't that big a deal. We just keep a tub like this with a couple stones in it, and you're good to go whenever you need to sharpen. However, I didn't like that feature because oftentimes I'm bringing my sharpening stuff here to the shop or to a place I'm teaching, and it just seemed to be a little cumbersome and it can be messy. But I did graduate from those. What I've ended up with now is these. And these are a set of natural Arkansas oil stones. So these are actually 3 stones that are naturally produced, and they're quarried, and they're 3 different grits. And there's a few different grits you can get, but the ones I settled on are labeled a soft Arkansas stone, which is kind of a medium to coarse grit. There is a hard Arkansas stone, which is kind of a fine grit. And then there is the hard black, which is a ultra fine grit. And there's also a hard white translucent, which is even finer still. The grit comparisons to these versus, say, sandpaper or water stones is a little skewed because these are measured on the micron level. But I would say we're probably at about 1,000 grit, 6,000 grit, maybe 10,000 grit here. And what do I like about these? Well, really, that's my entire sharpening set. So I have 3 sets of stones. I have an oil can with a honing oil in there, which I just use a mixture of baby oil and a little bit of mineral oil to thicken it up a little bit. And that's all I need. I do add in a leather strap with some buffing compound on it, or buffing rouge. But before I ever touch one of my sharpening stones, I like to start off by grabbing the tool that needs sharpened, at least for the first time, and bringing in a bench grinder. So the reason I like to start off with a grinder is to establish a hollow ground bevel on the plane iron or the chisel that I'm sharpening. That way when I get to my actual sharpening stones, I'm only sharpening just a little bit of metal. I'm not worrying about the rest of the bevel. The hollow ground makes the sharpening process a whole lot faster. So starting off with the grinder isn't something you have to do every time, but it's something I like to start off with just to establish a good hollow on there before I do start using it. So let's talk about this grinder I brought in. Now, obviously this doesn't look like a normal bench grinder, and it's not. This is a slow speed wet grinder. So on this side we have a wheel that is riding in a water trough, and this is basically like the old style big sharpening stones that you would sit at and spin the wheel with your feet as you're sharpening your tool. This is just much smaller scale. We also have a tool rest on here, and then we have another wheel on the opposite side, and this is a leather strap wheel. The grinder also has the ability to spin forward towards me, and it has the ability to turn around and spin backwards away from me. When I'm establishing my primary bevel, however, I like to usually have it spinning towards me. It seems to cut a little bit better, and it's just a little bit faster process. Now, in addition to the tool holder, a lot of these manufacturers have many different attachments that can go on here to help you hold your tool at the correct angle as you're sharpening. This one in particular is for a flat blade, and it just slides in there and it references up against one side, and you have a couple of knobs to hold your tool down. So the first thing I like to do when I'm grinding my bevel is to use a black marker and color in the entire surface of that bevel. Okay. So the reason I color in my bevel, especially when I'm doing this first initial grind, is once I start removing metal, it's very easy to see where I'm at and to judge my progress. Once all that black marker is removed from the bevel, I know that I have a complete hollow grind and I'm ready to go to my stones. So let's get this installed in here. And I like to just judge by eye where that bevel is sitting, and then I can adjust my tool rest as needed. And the goal here is to have that bevel making as much contact with the stone as I can. That's pretty good. Then we'll tighten it down. So one thing to note here, because this is a slow speed grinder and the stone is running in a bath of water, I don't have to have safety glasses on for this. But if you are using a high-speed grinder, or if you're more comfortable with safety glasses on, feel free to use them. Use whatever safety equipment you feel like you need to. So now that we are locked in here, we're just gonna turn this on and start to grind it away. Okay, there we go. So now all the black marker's gone. That tells me I have a complete hollow grind on that bevel. Now, a couple things to note when you're using wet dry grinder like this. The first thing is you want to keep the bevel moving on the width of the stone. You can see as I'm making my cuts, I'm sliding back and forth. That's making sure that you don't wear one area of the stone more than the other. The other thing is I always like to have extra water close, because once you fill this trough up with water and it starts picking water and the stones start soaking in, that water can dissipate really quickly. So I like to have some available just in case I need to splash some more in. But now that we have that ground, we can go ahead and move over to the stones and take a look at those. But first, we're going to touch up the back. So now that we have the bevel established, let's go ahead and flatten the back. With oil stones, just need a couple of lines of oil. And flattening the back is as easy as just applying pressure and making circles, figure eights, and strokes until we have a consistent scratch pattern. And that's pretty good for that one. So then we'll step up a grit. Okay. And we'll go to the fine stone. And all we're looking at here is for that last 1/8 inch or so behind the edge of the blade to be flat and shiny. So with the back taken care of, now we can tackle the bevel. And my preferred method here is just to freehand it. With that hollow grind, you can set the chisel down and rock it until you feel it contacting on the heel and the edge of the blade. And then I just lift it just a hair and make strokes. In about 15 strokes, you can see where the edge is getting polished off that stone, and you can feel on the back side we're pushing a burr off. I can feel it, it's just like a little wire. And that's what we're looking for. Then I'll make a stroke on the back and knock it off. Then we'll go to the next grit. And then we'll go to our last stone. All right, because this is a fine stone, that burr is really, really fine, but it's still there. So now as a final sharpening, I'll take this to just a leather strop. I'll hit the back a couple of times. Then I'll do the same thing on the face. And a strop like this is great for edge maintenance during a project too. There we go. Now that's going to be the sharpest chisel back in our rack back there. But overall, if you follow these easy sharpening steps, you'll have sharp tools in your shop and they'll be safer and cleaner.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed that video tip, be sure to subscribe to the Woodsmith Shop channel. Now, every week we're adding great woodworking tips and woodworking videos. All you have to do is hit the bell to be notified. Plus, you'll find project plans and downloads in the description below.